comments? I mean, there may be pro, con. I'd like to know about that.
Thank you. I can only tell you that a week from tonight, the summer concerts start, and there'll be no rest for the weary. Moving right along to the consent calendar, we take this as a single vote. There are two items, the joint meeting minutes from May 17th, and to reconsider the intention to levy business improvement assessments for the coming year for the Capitola Village Wharf Business Improvement Area. Would anyone like to pull either of these items or speak on them? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt consent calendar.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Go forth and improve the business. Thank you, Karin. Now to general government public hearing, discuss the proposed 2017-18 fiscal year budget. Staff. And the mayor has arrived, and I will pass the gavel over. But please begin.
Accident in the village.
Oh, really?
Your timing is impeccable.
It is.
Really?
I just took care of the housekeeping.
All the housekeeping.
The real business is all yours.
Good, thank you. How is everyone?
Great.
Good. So we did the
So where was
We are at the agenda.
right down there.
Madam Mayor, did you want to make
Ice cream.
any comments? We just passed that, and I want to give you the opportunity.
So we're on comments. We don't have oral communications, but
We handled everything, and we just finished oral communications from all the council members except for you.
oh, good.
What help you have?
Oh, good. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. And I hope everyone had a good time at the party last night. That was fun. And I have the additional service pins. So if anyone didn't get one, or if anyone knows of someone who didn't get one, or anyone knows someone who would like one as a souvenir, we have extras, and we're happy to pass them around for you to wear proudly as a service award recipient. I don't have any other additional comments except the city attorney's evaluation. We can either do it ASAP, as in turn it in tomorrow and get it on the next agenda, or we can take some time and think about it and do it next week, and we'll put it on the following agenda.
I'd rather
So,
take some time.
okay, so let's do that, and we'll
That'll be the 22nd.
So just like by the end of next week, be sure and turn it in. You have the form. If you've lost it, we'll get you another one, and we'll turn it in to Larry, and then we will have on the closed session next time a closed session review of the city attorney, and then on the regular agenda, we'll I think we should continue the city attorney's contract to that meeting. I mean, it's on that agenda. I'm sorry, it's already on that agenda for the consent. Yeah, so we'll just we'll move it from next week into the following meeting. Yeah, so we have them on the same time.
So we want both the closed session item and the contract to match.
Yeah.
On the 22nd
Yeah.
of June.
Yeah, because we shouldn't do his contract before the evaluation, so. Okay, any other public comments? Okay, then, have we done public comments yet? Okay, this is the time for the public.
It's all done.
Oh, all finished, all that?
We're done
Great.
consent.
Great, wonderful. Well, then we'll just go right on to our main business today, which is the budget.
All right, Madam Mayor, members of council, this is the second budget hearing for the 2017-18 budget. I'm going to touch on a couple slides that I touched on at the last meeting just to remind everybody where we stand, and then answer a few questions if there are any about where we're going from here. So as we reported in the budget and as we indicated at the last meeting, the local economy continues to grow, and staff sees growth in our major revenue sources. We presented essentially a status quo departmental budget. There are no new positions that are added in this year's budget. The Public Works Project Manager was added at mid-year last year, and that continues in this year's budget. This year, we do have a number of new revenue streams coming online. That includes the Measure S Library Fund, which will help us build our new Capitola Library. Measure F will become on mid-year to help fund beach infrastructure, police staffing, bike ped safety. And then the small chunk, but not insignificant, of the RTC's Measure D, we will begin to receive that revenue and devote to road maintenance and safety improvements on our streets. As I mentioned previously, the ongoing PERS costs remain a major threat in the long term. Even though we're doing well now, down the road, I definitely see issues, and I'll have more detail on that later in the presentation. In addition, this is a point I always make at this time in the budget cycle, is the city heavily relies on sales tax, and sales tax is an extremely volatile source of revenue. Other sources of tax, such as property tax and TOT, tend to be more stable in the long term and less subject to economic variability. Some of the highlights in this year's budget is that we begin construction for the new library. We have a proposed $780,000 transfer into the library fund. With this allocation, the funding gap between the library budget and then the 100% committed funds is $1.75 million. We expect the Friends fundraising campaign to help close that gap, and we will be talking later this evening about other opportunities to help close that gap. The budget includes a 3.1% COLA, which is based on the average 2016 CPI for the San Francisco all urban consumers CPI. And in addition, our classic employees ending up paying 1.1% more towards PERS, so the net to employees is 2% based on the current MOUs. We have the final payment in our POB that was, I think, issued back in 2007, I want to say. Measure D will be expiring this year with Measure F kicking in. We're implementing the changes to the junior guard program that the council directed this fall. We're maintaining our reserve levels at policy. There's no significant changes in our liability insurance, which is a big change from prior years where we've been seeing steady increases in our liability insurance due to the 2011 pipe failure incident. And in workers' compensation, we're seeing a decrease of almost $90,000 in our premiums there as well. At a high level, this is sort of the overall budget picture. You'll note that one number in there that highlighted in the red circle is the personnel number. That dropped by $30,000 due to what's in your proposed budget, due to a calculation error that we plan to correct in the final budget. So that number is a little bit less. And overall, it's less than the prior year, and this is due to the way the POB costs were allocated. And since with the POB paid off, those costs no longer show up in the personnel line item. The major changes in contract services were $25,000 was put in for the 88 transition plan. We had zero in booking fees last year due to a donation that was received by the sheriff. So we've budgeted $25,000 there. The audit cost has gone up. Our animal services JPA, as we've discussed, there's some cost increase there. Utility cost increases and a smaller increase in the 911 JPA. Travel and training, we're putting in proposing a slightly new program this year where each council member is allocated a $1,000 training budget. And then if come May 15th, the council member hasn't used it, it would be available for all council members to use. And then we have a number of significant transfers that we're proposing in the general fund, specifically the library fund transfer we talked about at $780, $100,000 into the RTC street funds to help augment those projects. Significant transfer from both Measure F and the general fund into the equipment fund, which we'll detail a bit later, and then putting transfers into the reserves to keep them at policy levels. So I touched on this previously, and this is, I think, something that this is trying to highlight the issue with the PERS cost increases. So this is a multi-year budget projection for the city, and there's relatively conservative assumptions associated with revenue growth and with costs. And what you'll see is when we look back at prior years, that the current fiscal year is the dark line right down the middle. And you'll see in last year we had a significant revenue exceeded expenditures, which is part of the reason we have the fund balance that we'll be talking about later this evening. And then in coming years, we project for both the next two budget cycles running a slight surplus that could be allocated towards CIP projects or other council priorities. But then when we hit 2021, essentially with status quo and revenue growth as anticipated, we break even. And then going forward from there, that's where the PERS cost increases start to really hit. So we all need to keep an eye towards those dates, 2021, 22, 23, because there's going to be some real challenges coming. One of the things we also often do during the budget cycle is talk about organizational efficiency opportunities. And this year we're not proposing any significant changes, but we are looking at implementing a number of changes that have been proposed and are previously authorized by council. Both are in public works. One was to look into a contract with Green Waste to evaluate the opportunity to contract with them for street sweeping services. That was something we talked about last year in the budget. The issue has been that Green Waste doesn't want to do a one-off contract with just one city. It's just not viable for them to do that. And so they're in discussions with both the county and Scotts Valley about similar opportunities. And we do anticipate getting some sort of proposal for us to evaluate this coming calendar year. In addition, the council has authorized the addition of the Public Works Project Manager position, and in the long term, we anticipate the structure on the right, which is without a maintenance superintendent, but that will take place when the maintenance superintendent retires, and so we're sort of in the process of transitioning to that management structure that we have on the right. Yeah?
Back to the high-level budget, if we look at personnel, does it include the new position? And when we look at contract services, does it include Kimley Horn? I'm trying to track the 100,000.
So yes, the personnel includes the new position.
Right.
And contract services for Kimley Horn, I'll let the Public Works Director answer because probably best.
No, it does not. There's not another $100,000 allocated.
So
to Kimley Horn.
that money has been switched.
Right.
And it's represented
Right.
here. Good. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
For the new position, does that assume hiring in July, August, or what time frame?
I believe the position is fully budgeted for the entire fiscal year. Is that correct? Yeah.
Okay, but they're not on board yet.
They're not on board yet, so obviously there's a potential salary savings there, although the workload continues to accrue. So this is the proposed capital projects. This is something the Finance Advisory Committee asked for. We had this previously as a page in the budget, and they asked for a little bit of an explanation about kind of what was going on with each one of these significant, we call them significant non-recurring projects. At the top is the accounting for the library. As I mentioned, we have a $13.1 million budget, and with the proposed $780,000 transfer, we'd be left with a $1.75 million unfunded construction budget at this time. But we do have time to fill it, and we will be evaluating options over the coming months about how to do so. The equipment fund is sort of exciting this year. We have a new front-end loader we're proposing to purchase to replace the 20-year-old front-end loader that no longer is compliant with airborne standards. A new truck, tractor components, and then the face plates for the parking. They've taken a beating down in our marine environment. In addition, we've purchased numerous pay stations over time, and so there's a non-standard format between them, which can lead to some confusion in some cases. So this will be replacing essentially the front-facing electronics and all of them, bringing them up to new standards. And then we also have the police antenna, relocating the police antenna from the temporary library building during construction to the community center. We also talked about the Measure F projects, which was beginning the design process for the wharf and then fully funding flume reconstruction, jetty reconstruction, and we had $40,000 for the Grand Avenue path. Now, based on council's direction at the last meeting, staff is proposing to take the funding out of the Grand Avenue path and put $20,000 each into the jetty reconstruction and flume reconstruction to ensure we can hit that budget to get the projects completed. So that is a change from our last budget hearing.
Question.
Sure.
So how are we doing on setting up the Citizens Committee, working with the residents on Depot Hill?
Councilmember Bertrand, so you'll recall at the last meeting, we talked about setting up a citizens committee, and I think it wasn't going to be done by staff, was my understanding of the direction, that it was going to be a citizen-led effort, and we were going to have Councilmember Peterson as the city's representative attending that group.
I've had a couple people reach out saying that they're interested. I've had a couple people send me recommendations of people they think will be interested. And by the end of this week, I'm going to be kind of reaching out to some more people and trying to schedule something to actually get the meetings going.
Okay. Thank you.
Was the $40,000 for the path out of the Measure F fund, or was that out of the general fund?
Measure F.
So we're just reallocating Measure F money.
That's the staff's proposal, yes. Thank you. So we're going to have a new fund here, which is going to be basically where all our street projects are going to live on a go-forward basis, and this is the RTC Measure D local fund. So we're projecting $285,000 in revenue coming in from that Measure D, and then transferring an additional $100,000 from the general fund, which gives us a $385,000 budget to work with. And staff has proposed $65,000 for the green bicycle lane paint, which would get, as council will recall, all 3 of the Highway 1 interchanges done. Right now, we have funding to do 1 of them. And then in addition, $320,000 for a slurry seal project. And when we get into the CIP projects, I know our Public Works Director has an update about the pavement management index. He just received a report, I think, today, and how that slurry seal money could be allocated. In addition, out of the facilities fund, staff is proposing fixing some of the problems out in front of City Hall, the parking lot, and some of the pathways, which have been significantly ground down so many times to level them out that there's not much concrete left. So there's a $110,000 program there, as well as $75,000 to fix the parking lot out at the community center at Jade Street. And then, in addition, there's a CDBG grant application, which we would propose applying for this fall, which staff believes the city would be competitive for, which we anticipate it being about a $1.3 million request, which would fund the Clares Street reconstruction and Complete Streets project. With that, we're going to go into the ADA, and the CIP, and the ongoing projects that have been funded in previous budget cycles, and their status and where they are right now. So, Steve.
So there's like three slides of these projects, and I'm going to touch on them lightly. If you have any question, just speak up. And I just want to mention the budgeted funding I list here is how much was budgeted. In certain amounts, portions of it has been spent already as we've gone through the project. So ADA transition plan update is underway. Phase 1 is underway. That was a $75,000 contract. That's looking at all our facilities and our programs, like our rec programs and things like that, making sure they're compliant. Phase 2 is funded in the next budget cycle that we're considering now, and that'll look at all our roads and sidewalks to make sure we're compliant there. So we anticipate that being completed by the end of next fiscal year. The Monterey and Park Trail, so that's the trail that goes up to the railroad, and then to Monterey Avenue, and then across and into the area along Park Avenue. That one just keeps getting shot at by different utilities. So right now we are setting up a meeting with the California Public Utilities Commission, who needs to approve changes we're making to the crossing that the RTC wants at Monterey Avenue near the trail. So we're trying to set that up, and we also need to get Iowa Pacific's approval. So we have a schematic design. The RTC has approved it. At a staff level, we do need to go to the RTC board at some point, but we're waiting to get the PUC and railroad approvals.
I thought that the Iowa was out of the picture.
No, Iowa Pacific's still the, what's the VC?
2022, I think?
2022, okay.
Really?
Yeah.
And the funding from that doesn't come from our general fund, does it?
There's, out of the $300,000, there's $250,000 from the RTC and $50,000 of general fund money in there. Stockton Bridge Parkway, so that's where we looked at some schematic designs for redoing what's known as Hubbock Park, where the pump station is. I've got those schematics, or architectural renderings really, of some options. They're on my desk. Just kind of looking for an opportune time to bring it here. Probably not a high priority to move forward with it, so that's why I haven't brought them forward yet. But that work is complete, and there's a little bit of money that was left over there. Rispin Pathway Phase 2, as we know, we ran into a design problem and then the rain, so work has restarted there, and it should be completed. I'm hoping in June, but I put July there to make sure we try and meet that.
I just have a question about that. So a lot of people are walking through there. Should we designate a preferred path so that we don't have any issues with falls or something of that sort?
I'll go look at that. I haven't been up there. Usually they would have it closed off and be forcing them around while they're working. But if they're working there, I'll go look at that.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, we need to keep them safe.
Is the Rispin project still completely funded, or did capital projects take out of that fund, or
The park project?
The entire, yeah, all the work we had planned for the park, is that still?
Yes, I believe it is, yeah.
Okay.
We'll have to revisit the cost estimates, but yes, at the time it was completely funded. So that brings us to Richmond Park. Obviously, we're waiting to get this project done before we go out to bid. So if we get that completed, it will go to bid in July on the park project itself. I can't read it. Esplanade, Esplanade Park retaining walls, that's up on the upper part of Esplanade Park. You know, we're still struggling with what the scope of that project's going to be, so we're working to find that. I'm trying to coordinate a project with the owner of the Crest Apartments to see if there's a joint project we can do. With, you know, the property line's about halfway up that hill, as it turns out. So trying to coordinate that. We have $111,000. We haven't spent any of that yet. Hill Street improvements, so we had a meeting back in February on that, and I'll actually be coming forward at the next week's agenda to make some suggestions on what we can do there. We've spent about half of that $70,000 there, and have plenty enough to do a striping project, but not to build new sidewalks there.
Did we renotice all those people that came to the public hearing, do you know? That's a different question for Rich.
No, so the public hearing for Hill Street?
Yeah.
So, yes.
We renoticed that?
Yeah, we
Okay.
sent those notices out
Great,
yesterday.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Unless you wanted to answer that, Rich. The Bay and Cap Ave roundabout, really trying to set people's goals on this one. We're doing the utility undergrounding first. It's at least a 2-year project, year and a half, 2-year project. Before we can really do the underground. I did talk to them, can we, you know, do a smaller undergrounding? And they said once, it's all got to go through the same design. It's not going to slow it down to do all the undergrounding, which is the entire length of Bay and down Monterey to the village. So as we drive down Monterey, you won't be looking at overhead wires anymore.
Great.
So that's nice, but it's really, we can't do much about the roundabout until we get there. We have $200,000. We've probably spent about 40 of that on the preliminary designs that have been done, and we're spending it, it's kind of going now, coordinating with PG&E and trying to get that project moving.
But, you know, at some point, I mean, we still haven't had a neighborhood meeting, have we? To talk with everybody there to see if they want that? Maybe we should start at the beginning.
We talked about it, but we didn't, you know, we didn't want to get people's hopes up because it's so far out. at
Or
this point.
fears up. A lot of people are scared of it. And
I haven't heard that
they're worried about,
recently.
you know,
Most
that it's-
people, but I'd be happy to, we could set that up. We still want to go through the undergrounding. I mean, the undergrounding's been on the books since before I started here. We finally have enough credits that PG is willing to work on it. For the first 10 years I've been here, they weren't even willing to look at it because of there wasn't enough credits. So we want to keep going with the utility project, regardless of if we do a roundabout or not.
But I want to be clear, our staff recommendation probably wouldn't be to start holding hearings about the roundabout if we couldn't even start the project until 2019.
No, I'm not
20,
saying
yeah.
when. I'm just saying, you know,
Yes.
at some
Right.
point, people are going to come
Right.
to us and say, well, what's wrong with the stop sign? What about lights? What about this? You know,
Yeah.
have you looked at other things? They're so fearful of something new and different that I think we're going to need to start at the beginning with everybody
Right.
and go through it and give them an opportunity to talk to us and see what they would like to have there. And it may end up being the roundabout or it may not. John?
So I think you've met with some concerned people in the area already to try to allay their fears.
On the roundabout?
Yeah.
Very few. I mean,
That's what, I'm
yeah.
getting some feedback that you've met with some people. I
Right.
guess they came to you first or something.
Yeah, I
not
mean,
like
I
you're
had.
not reaching out.
Well, I had people reach out to me about concerns about the intersection.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talked to them about, you know, our plans to put a roundabout in, they seemed alleviated by that because the biggest concern is pedestrian safety at that intersection because the crosswalks are so long to get across that skewed intersection. So, to be honest, I haven't had anybody that I can remember concerned about putting a roundabout in there. They were mainly pedestrian
Okay, I know one
concerns.
person. Okay, yeah, that intersection, I get a lot of comments on that.
Right.
I can't remember the name of the firm, the engineering firm, but didn't we have a traffic, 4 or 5 years ago, the recommendation was for a roundabout?
Yeah,
as
Kinley
opposed to
Horn, yeah, and that's the preliminary design that we have. and
Right, but they're
we
traffic
still kind of-
engineers, and they like to design things and build things, you know, do that kind of
Well,
thing. So
I'm
you
just,
gotta
I'm
take a
just trying to address the function of it.
Oh,
I mean,
right.
when you're
Right,
talking about
right.
stop signs versus signals,
Right.
I think their recommendation was that
Absolutely,
the most
absolutely.
effective
Yeah.
device there would be.
Right, and then I've gotten a lot of people that said they were really concerned about it.
And it's also the source of a airborne grant.
It will be when we get
Because
closer.
it is
Yeah.
a major reduction in emissions from vehicles having a roundabout.
Right.
But we don't have a grant for it.
No, we don't, because we
We
don't
could apply
have,
for a
we
grant.
need to be closer to the finish line before we apply for that.
And an opportunity for an art figure in the middle.
Oh, gosh, yes.
You know, could happen. It could happen.
No, I think it should be a doorway to the underground.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Sorry for the,
Oh, that's fine. Green bike lanes, so we've already awarded that, and we added $65,000 from the RTC new funding, and that'll begin in June and go into next fiscal year. Stockton Avenue Bridge assessments, I was looking at options to deal with the log buildup that can happen there. We've completed that study. We have identified something short of tearing down the bridge, which I don't think anybody wants to do. So I'll be bringing that forward at the appropriate time in the near future.
Steve, was that the FEMA thing that we were going to do in order to qualify, or is that something different?
The FEMA thing we did was just the local hazard mitigation plan. So we've completed that, and this is the next step. And then we may be able to get funding to help us implement something to mitigate that through FEMA. Signal coordination on 41st. So that is an airboard grant we have ongoing. I'm sure you'll all recollect the estimated cost was about $280,000, and the bids came in at $560,000 for that. So we rejected all the bids, and we're looking at options of maybe purchasing the equipment ourselves. Essentially, the equipment for that was $125,000 from the manufacturer, and they tripled the cost in the bids for that. So we're trying to work our way through that and working with the airboard on that one. We may just do a redesign and tighten up the specs and go out to bid, although I'm kind of leery because from what I've heard, all of these signal contractors are so busy that they don't need any more work at this point, which means we won't get the cost we want. FANMAR design, so there was money to start the design work on FANMAR, and I'm going to start that next, actually this week, moving forward with that design. It's only $50,000, not going to get it paved, but it will get the design work started.
PMP Bank.
Pavement Management Bank. So this is where we did put some money aside, about $65,000 for slurry seals and pavement management plan. A big chunk of that we took when we decided to repave Stockton Avenue earlier this year, but there is some money there. We authorized a pavement management plan update, which is being done today, or started today. I met with the inspectors. They're going out and driving every street and giving us a new pavement condition index, and that's going to help us identify where to put our slurry seal that we want to do. And we're going to focus on identifying all the roads that we can slurry seal, and then depending on our final budget on that, we'll go from there. And then it will also identify, give us a condition of every street and the opportunity to plan for the future.
When was the last time we did that index? How long ago was that done?
2010.
Thank you.
And it's typically something you want to do every 5 to 6 years. So we're a little bit farther behind, but we haven't had a ton of money. We knew which projects we wanted.
So I'd be interested in how they've changed, and what's caused the degradation and, some sense of traffic perhaps or road condition that caused that.
Most of the degradations can be just age of the pavement.
Just age of the pavement.
Yeah, that's what I see as I go around, and you see fresh alligatoring. That's going to happen where wheels are, but it's because the pavement's drying out and becoming more brittle. But they will give us, we switched firms that are doing our inspection, but they can give us what it was the last time it was inspected and what it is now.
Okay, so it's not like heavy traffic or some sort of abuse like that. It's mostly the aging.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Sanctuary markers.
Sanctuary markers. So we have $10,000, and we're going to get together with the mayor here. We've finally found the artist. We have a fee schedule from her, and decide what we want to put up on. I think it's up on Cliff. And we'll try and get that done as quickly as we can now that we've got that information. It was rather difficult to find the person who makes them and what they cost, so we're ready to move forward with that one. And finally, probably the two biggest projects on the books, well, they're all big, but Clare Street improvements, so we're under design again. We've never really done a final design on that. We had only done a preliminary design back when it was part of the hotel project at the Rispin. So we're back under design. We have a $120,000 RTC grant that's still available for that. And I know the question had become what happened to the local funds we had put in there recently. And so those are the transfers we made from this project. $56,000 to the Stockton Avenue improvements, $100,000 for the staff augmentation, $70,000 McGregor, and $35,000 to tennis courts. So when we get there, Jamie said we're going to be looking for a CDBG grant. Since we've initially thought about this project, it's become necessary to reconstruct Claire's, the pavement section there, so it's gone significantly higher from a $350,000 probably to $1 million project, and that's why we'll be going after the CDBG grant on that. And last but not least, the Park Avenue sidewalks. Once again, we're under design on that one. We have about $170,000, and I anticipate going to bid on that in the spring, or going to construction in the spring in 2018. I think that's our ongoing list, plus what we're adding this year.
The little bollards on Bromer Street in front of that beautiful hotel, did we ever order those? Can we order those this year, please?
We've replaced them several times.
Recently?
Uh-huh.
Ooh,
Yes, we have, but
they look
they get
stuffed up.
hit all the time.
Yeah.
And that's why they have to be able to get knocked down, is because they get hit. But I'll keep on our crews to keep them maintained and try and keep them standing up straight and going. But they're doing a great job of what they need to do.
I know, but they don't look good. They look like they're all worn out and dirty, and I know, but in front of that beautiful, gorgeous, very fancy hotel, it seems like we ought to be able to come up with something else. Is there anything else that would work there other than we don't want to? Well, I know we don't want a structure because it'll get hit.
Right.
Bushes, landscaping. Seriously.
Cacti.
Well, then you have a curb, and then you're kind of
Yeah.
defeating the purpose of the knockdowns. So I'll look into it some more. I know we replaced them all.
Very unattractive. Very, very, very unattractive.
I'll make.
And so I'll look in a catalog here if there's anything else. Yeah, big bumps. Anything else?
Look good until they get run over.
Anything
Yeah.
else? Yeah, I thought they hadn't been replaced. I'm sorry.
No, but I'll see what we can do.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's the end of mine.
Questions? John?
So part of the sidewalk at Park neighborhood meeting? Because I
Yes.
still get requests for
Yes,
that.
well, once we get the design to a point where we can show somebody what it's going to look like in front of their house, and that's when we're going to schedule that meeting, because I want to be able to present to them more than we have right now.
Okay, yeah. I'd like to know about that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Pretty close to where I live.
Okay, so that brings us then to the next part of our conversation, which is about the general fund balance. And as council will recall, staff is estimating about a $1.6 million general fund balance at the close of this fiscal year. Staff recommends keeping an allocation of about $500,000 or more in the general fund, which leaves up to about $1.1 million that could be allocated to other council priorities. So these priorities were presented, or options were presented to the council at the last meeting, and the Finance Advisory Committee reviewed them as well. And I'm going to turn it over to our Finance Advisory Committee Chair, Treasurer Wilk, for a facts recommendation.
Thank you, Jamie. So the Financial Advisory Committee met on the budget 3 times, and over the course of those meetings, we really voiced no major issues with the status quo budget or the equipment fund or the CIP or ongoing projects, and instead focused on this $1.6 million general fund balance, as Jamie pointed out. So we tried to not spend too much time on small budget items or items that we knew the City Council already had strong opinions on, but rather focus on more financial items that we feel as a financial committee would be, we'd be fiscally responsible. So having said that, you can see what our recommendations are. as Jamie pointed out, in 2021, we're looking at a potential shortfall in the budget because of the PERS Trust. So we highly recommend putting aside some $400,000 to begin preparing for that shortfall, so we can have a buffer for that activity. We talked a little bit about the library project, but given the fact that there's already $780K in the baseline budget to begin to chip away at that shortage, we chose to be silent on that and let the City Council decide whether or not they needed to put more money in that fund. We did talk a lot about the streets and the need to show something short term that we are paying attention to our roads. There's been obviously a lot of ballot measures and funding associated with that, and so we thought that it would be wise to fully fund the slurry seal activity and be able to show their community that we've made some serious progress on our streets. And finally, as you well know, we are having staffing issues. We have lost some people recently. We're trying hard to replace them, and as Jamie pointed out in the last meeting, one of our problems is trying to attract and keep middle management. And to do that, he's come up with what we thought was a clever notion, and again, he discussed this before, that we could help with housing down payments and basically just losing the interest on the money we would invest, but basically that would be paid back over time, to help attract and hold middle management employees in place. So we highly recommend putting some funds into that activity so that we can begin pursuing that approach. Now, we don't have the details of exactly how that plan would work, but if we choose to fund it, we can work out the details, and Jamie said he would spend some time on that. I was able to get absolutely no traction on convincing anybody of the Financial Advisory Committee to repay any of our 3.25% Pac Cove loans, and so that is not something we as a committee recommend. So as you can see, we've got our three major recommendations, and that we hope you will consider those seriously.
Thank you very much.
All right. So with that, I was going to pivot a little bit to our work plan priority items. This was a process we went through this winter when we looked at our goals and objectives for our fiscal year, and the council added a number of either budgetary or work plan items. They are either included in the previous list or included in this next list of sort of new work plan concepts. A lot of the other concepts were things that we could integrate into what we're doing already. They included the CIT training, as well as identifying community policing as a top priority for the city. But these were some sort of new ideas that came up during the council conversations about the budget. They came from one individual council member, and I think it'd be important for the council to weigh in on whether or not this is something that they would like to see staff work on this next fiscal year. One of them was to look into options to form an economic development committee, either here or regionally. I will let you know that I've reached out to MBEP, which is the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, of which the city is a member, and they do have some openings on some of their subcommittees. So if council members were interested in working on regional economic development, that is an opportunity through MBEP to do so. There was a discussion, a council member had talked about maybe team building opportunities for the council, and one way we could do that would be some sort of facilitated retreat. We obviously could do so if the council would like to add that to the work plan for this next fiscal year. Increasing participation or having some sort of youth committee or council. And we've looked at a number of different options in discussions with Council Member Peterson. Probably the two most viable options would be some sort of partnership with the school district. Alternatively, increasing our youth membership on existing committees would be options to look at. And then two other items have come up during the budget conversations is a future review of our housing inclusionary ordinance, which would be something that could be taken up after the zoning code update, and then a review and sort of taking a deep dive into the rec program for the council. So with that, that brings us to the council deliberations for tonight. And our recommendation is that you consider the facts recommendations and identify uses for up to, you don't have to get to the number, but 1.1 million in fund balance. Determine if the new work plan items should be incorporated into the budget. Identify any areas where you'd like additional staff research or questions you'd like answered moving forward, and then provide direction on other budget issues. And then I'll just close it out, and we can circle back to that slide. This is our budget calendar coming up. Our next meeting is would be June 7th, which is a special budget hearing. We have room on the June 8th agenda for budget deliberations, and we penciled it in for a general government item on the budget. And what we may want to do is determine when we leave off tonight how many of these meetings we want to keep, all of them, or if we want to take some of the special meetings off the calendar. And with that, staff is available for questions.
Mike?
Could you put a blank spreadsheet up, and perhaps we can log each of the council's recommendations for the money and have an idea of where everyone is and where we fall in line and where we don't?
Sure. We're talking about the,
Madam Mayor, that sounds like a...
Yeah.
Good.
we're talking about the fund balance allocation?
Right.
Sure, just give me a moment.
Go right ahead. But I'll start talking anyway. Well, it takes a moment.
Won't stop you.
Thank you.
Possible.
I'll talk about the increase to the library fund,
If I can find
which was inspired by Councilmember Bottorff 2 weeks ago. I like the idea of your senior, exercise equipment, but I think before we should allocate it before we spend anything. Staff should look at other cities that have this, like Santa Cruz I know has it, and see if it's actually used. If it's used vibrantly, full steam ahead. If it's not, then we have to change the way it's done and not just go down the same path they did and wind up with senior exercise equipment that is more of a city sculpture than an actual.
Well, we need to talk to Elise and see if she's also gotten any interest in it, requests for it, whether she has room for it. We need to have.
Well, there's a lot of different places. I mean, we can, like I said, it's nice to encumber that, set it aside so we know we have it. But there's Monterey Park, there's Jade Street Park, there's so many places.
We need to see if there's a need for it.
But I want to see if other cities, and I know Santa Cruz has done this, several of their parks, they put in these park courses for seniors, and no one ever touches them.
Yeah. Cabrillo had one for a while.
Right, and I want to know why not, and what can we do that's different, and maybe people do use them and we just don't know it. Just food for thought. The employee purchase, while Jamie's working on that, I think it's a great idea. I don't think we should put the money into a fund, but I think we should leave that money in the fund balance, because we need to, number one, and most importantly, poll our department heads to see if this is something they would use. If this is not something that is attractive to them, we shouldn't be doing it. Perhaps we have the wrong numbers. Perhaps there should be different numbers or a different size, or we should tailor it differently. We shouldn't just go by San Mateo's first pass because, number one, they haven't done any loans yet, but they do have it on the books. Before we put it on the books, let's see what our employees want, and then we can fulfill those needs. The slurry project, again, I'll talk about when the spreadsheet comes up because it's a great idea to increase that. I don't think we should do anything with regard to City Hall improvements right now. I think it sends a bad message, even though I'd love to do the plaza out here when and if we can, and with public hearings about the tree, which will be part of that whole process. But this isn't the time to budget it. I think that, let's see, the City Hall Plaza, Basketball and Community Center, as soon as that comes up, I'll run it down because my numbers are like this. As per Ed's recommendation, library increases by $220,000 to an even million because it's easy for council members to keep track of even millions, not $776,000. Encumber the senior, $60,000. The extra $25,000 for the basketball court. An extra $200,000 to the slurry seal, bringing it up to almost $600,000 in road improvements. PERS fund to $400,000. So all of those are pretty much in line with the FAC, except for the employee helmet purchase, which I don't think we should encumber yet. but my total brings us to $905,000, which leaves $700,000 left in the fund balance. So there's more than enough there to fund the employee house purchase should we in 17-18 decide to go forward with it.
Or next year, if we,
Whatever it takes. I mean, we're not going to spend that. I mean, it should be kept there.
But don't we need some sort of statement from the city council to have Jamie pursue it?
Oh, without a doubt. And in my comments, with not budgeting it but keeping it in the fund balance is, again, like I said, poll the employees, confer more with the city that we've seen that has started this project, see if at this time anybody's taken advantage of it, bring us back a report so we can have it at a regular meeting, and the staff report would be on the department head home purchase program. At that time, we take the money out of the fund balance and encumber it.
And I want to be clear that the proposal at this time is not to make it a department head only, that this would be open to any employee.
And that's fine. And that's fine too. So, then in the polling question, it's all employees.
Right.
What would it take? What would the amount of money be that would be attractive? What would be the amount of money that you might need? What would it take? Would a $50,000 loan be just, throwing pennies at a $1,000 problem, or do we need to make it $100,000? And how do they feel about the no interest for 3 years and then paying it back? We need to get some meat into this before we actually budget for it. So, you want to go down the line?
Was that in the form of a motion?
No. I think each council member, put my name at the top and say, this is what I think, and then we can lay it all out and see where we agree and argue about the places where we don't. So, 25,000 basketball court, 0 city hall improvements, 60,000 senior exercise equipment, 400,000 PERS trust fund, 220,000 additional to the library. That brings it to $1 million if my math is correct. 200,000 into the streets, 0 in employee assistance at this time, and 0 there. And that sum should be 905,000. How amazing.
910, but I'm just close.
910. Oh, okay, I got it. You have 225 in there. I had 220, but I'm not going to quibble over $5,000.
There.
5,000 here, 5,000 there.
$1 million, yeah.
Pretty soon we're talking about real money. Okay, that's basically it. And that would leave a fund balance of $700,000, which would give us some headroom for the employee down payment assistance sometime in this year when we can deliberate on it more fully with more information. And I'm good. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah. So if the need to buy a house comes up, so we have to be in some sort of ready state to respond.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So whatever plan should be in abeyance at that point.
Well, yes, and like I said, I am all in favor of creating that program. It's an excellent one.
Right.
And the city treasurer brought out the best reason is that we want to keep our employees here and living here. And I just think that before we just slap $400,000 on it, let's find out what it's going to take. Let's do it deliberately, and let's do it soon.
Right.
As soon as the budget's passed, that $700 is still sitting in there.
Still sitting, right.
We can always throw $300,000 or $400,000 at it and still be fiscally responsible.
Ed?
Just a question, if we create a fund, what's the liability of putting the money in the fund? I mean, can we take the money back out of the fund? I mean, is it?
The simple answer is yes. If you set it aside at this point, if ultimately at the end of the day you were to determine that the program wasn't viable for whatever reason, it's not.
I'll go with the simple answer for now. So I'll go back on the top. Basketball course, 25,000, fine. City hall improvements, 0. I agree completely. We're not ready to do that now, and I don't agree with it, and the timing doesn't feel right.
But that was an amount that I requested for upstairs, not outside.
Yeah.
Those are different projects, totally different projects.
I could say on both projects I'm not in support of them, whether it's inside or outside. So
Should we add that then? This is
if you wanted to
facilities?
separate it, you could. But
They're different.
Because they're separate. This is city hall frontage. That right now is budgeted at 110. And were you weighing in on that one, Michael? as well?
No, I wanted to not do either one at this time.
Okay.
I mean, mid-year, it might be a time to look at what our position is. That
Okay.
would be the time to do something like that, I believe.
Okay.
I would be a 0 on both of this 12 and 13 also, so if that's
12 and 13.
facilities, city hall frontage, both of those are 0. I don't know how, yeah, and on the scene, okay, you're jumping around, sorry.
Should be good.
To copy and paste the rows.
I'm ready to go.
What about 12? Was 12 the facilities, didn't we both weigh in with a 0 on that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's under facilities, yeah, City Hall frontage.
Yeah, so there's two different projects here.
City Hall,
Oh, see, okay,
upstairs,
I got it, okay,
downstairs.
okay, so I'm
Yeah.
0 up there. Okay, now this senior equipment, I'm a 0 at this point on that. You know, what I will say is, you know, I like the idea of maybe looking into it, but my point is, which leads me to my next one is, if you want to set the money aside with the intent of researching it, that's how I feel about the employee program. I would like to set the money aside. I believe there's a need. I think the reason the city manager brought us to us is there's a need. I think that setting aside the money sends a positive message that we do support this. We can always work out the details, and we'll find out soon enough whether somebody wants to take advantage of it. But setting the money aside, establishing the fund, if nobody takes advantage of the fund, we didn't lose the money, but I think the message we send is our employees matter, and we're going to establish this fund.
So would you say the same thing, like for senior equipment and for employees, because they both are going to require more research?
Correct. So that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to go with. I'm going to let you allocate. I'm going to go along with the allocation. I think the 60,000 is high.
Yeah, it's high end.
High number. Okay. I would much rather see it around 25,000. You know, but like I said, yeah, there we go. Put in 25,000. With the employee program, that would be 300,000, as I think we originally talked about. Down one. Okay.
Wrong one. 300
apologies.
belongs, one, yeah, there we go.
It looks like you've got it on. Oh, there it is.
Yep.
Right, okay. First Trust, 500,000 is what I had asked for on that, and I really feel strong about that because, I mean, I look at us what we're doing with you know we're funding these projects that are great for the town, but I don't want to be sitting here, you know, when the PERS wall comes crashing down and saying, what do we do to allocate this? And I think we should fund this aggressively. And I think what I have allocated here still brings us under the goal. I mean, you got to 905. I took it right to the 1.1. So there's the difference. Okay.
Yeah.
The guideline kind of was try not to exceed or try to leave 500,000. So the library, 220,000. Yes. The streets. Big problem here. Okay, I appreciate the comment, Jock, or no, somebody, well, Peter, you made the comment about we need to show the city people that we're funding them. I want to tell you, we passed Measure O, and we showed them for 4 years in a row. We put $4 million into our streets. We funded, Steve, we did Monterey, we did Park, we did Rosedale, I mean, 38th Avenue, all those projects that never got done. So I don't feel like we've been disingenuous with spending money on roads. I really have a problem with taking general fund money that can be spent anywhere and allocating it into our roads when we have a pipeline of $400,000 a year, give or take, for the next 30 years. That's $12 million worth of road repair. So when that index comes back and shows us what we need, we can aggressively pay for those streets. But for me, every dime that goes someplace else that is you know eligible money is money we could put towards the library, because I still recognize that even with throwing $1 million at the library, we still have a $1.5 million shortage. Now, I'm optimistic that times are going to be good for another year or so, and we might come back and might have, Mark's going to find us money in the budget, and, you know, we'll have another, you know, $500,000 to throw at it next year. But I really believe that we will find a way to pay that off. But that means not using that money frivolously elsewhere. So I'm kind of trying to hold that line. Loan-free pay, no. So I think, I'm at $1,070,000. Is that
That's it.
okay?
Were you zero here?
What's zero? Streets, yeah, streets zero. No, whatever we've got. You know, if we were to have an easy, and plus for public works, if we had an easy year on streets, that wouldn't be a bad thing. And I know that maybe slurrying isn't a big project for you, Steve. You can just hire somebody out and they're going to do it. But, you know, for public works to play catch up, we've got so many projects that are going on here. So maybe not doing the streets this year, knowing that 400,000 will be there next year. I really don't have a problem with the streets. We've upgraded our streets. Stockton Avenue, we did twice. I mean, we've done our share for roads for the time being. And like I said, knowing to tell everybody, we can look them straight in the face saying, $400,000 a year for 30 years, we're going to make some improvements. So I'm good with the $1,070,000.
Jacques, you want to go next, or Kristen? I think it's Jacques.
Jacques, you're right.
Yeah. So I have a question of you, Steve. So for the slurry seal, you don't have to get out, well,
He doesn't
can
have
we
to
take
answer
that
it.
money?
You have to answer it.
You have to, I'm sorry. So this is a project that we're planning right now, so it doesn't go into our Measure D. So can we take money out of Measure D to pay for the slurry seal? Because we're not supposed to have money from that to take on projects that we're already,
So
acting
the
on.
money that he's allocating in there is our first year of Measure D funds, which
Okay.
we're anticipating.
Okay, so I thought
completely
that-
appropriate. Yeah.
Okay, I thought the slurry seal project was something that we've been planning. Okay.
No, what we're doing now is we're inventorying the condition of our streets so that we can identify which streets to slurry seal. We have not started any design work on the
Okay.
slurry seal.
So the 200,000 would completely fund, because we already have money, right?
There's proposed, help me, Jamie, 385, I think, in the budget for slurry seal right now. So this would add to that. I don't know if we want to slurry seal every street in the city that's capable. I don't know what that number is right now.
Okay.
I'll have that probably in another month, and then I'll share that with you.
Okay, so we could further this discussion. We could put whatever, let's say 200 right now, and then refine that amount later, right?
And if let's say, $400,000 slurry seals all the roads that need slurry sealing, we have money, then we go back and pick up the streets that we need to start paving again. So-
Okay.
So to be clear, the proposed budget as it's drafted today includes $320,000 for slurry seal project.
Yes.
So
And then-
with Councilmember Termini's recommendation, that number would increase to 520.
Right. And so, I like the idea that if we do it right now, we stave off degradation. So instead of putting it off, there's that wisdom there. So I'm going to go for the 200 on that.
That 300, by the 200 that I put in there for Ed, and thank you, Jacques, not just for slurry seal, I mean, that 520, some of that could be for chip seal or
Yeah.
road repavement. So just roads in general.
Right.
All right. So you've given me a 200 here.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
Okay.
And then we'll refine that later, depending on the report. So I'll go for the basketball court, and I'll go down 0 and then 60. And then, so in regards to some discussions coming up, and I think the mayor talked about this a little bit, and Mike did also. So we don't know if this town is going to be like real receptive to exercise equipment for seniors, okay? So what I propose is that we actually do something and in terms of reaching out to the public. So in general, I kind of like to reach out to the public on the overall recreational effort that we have right now and talk about what does Capitola think is a great recreational program. Do we like what we have? Do we want to do things that would improve it? So it would be not just for senior exercise equipment. The first committee I was on here in Capitola was Recreation Committee. And that got closed due to a bunch of situations. But at the time it got closed, I was reaching out to people in the neighborhood, and they were saying, I'd like to start this activity. I'd like to start this activity. And what's the way to do this? And then the committee got shut down, and I wasn't on the city council at that time, so things didn't go forward. So I will propose later that we actually restart that committee, reach out to citizens in Capitola, and look at our rec program. And maybe this exercise equipment would be one of the things that citizens in this city would like. And we have a lot of seniors here, and so we're putting money into, well, we already did. We put money into the tennis courts. I'm fully in support of doing it for the basketball courts. But I think we have about a third or more people in this town that are seniors, and I kind of like to address some of the issues that maybe they would feel should be addressed. And you're right, these pieces of equipment first started being shown in, that's an argument. I don't want to go into the argument. Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah, so I'm for 500 on the PERS. I completely agree with that. Meeting the needs of our employees' retirement is totally. I'll go for the library also.
I think it would be a good idea to have an informal committee, Jacques, that you could convene of interested people in recreation. Just meet in the community room over there. It doesn't have to be a formal city committee, but an informal committee, and meet and talk about what people would like to see in Capitola for our recreation program.
Well, I'm reaching out to someone that has a lot of recreation experience in this town, who's been volunteering on many different things, and I've been talking to him about it for about a year. The employee party last night, he said, yes, let's get together and come up with a proposal. So I don't know what the best proposal would be. It doesn't have to be a committee, but I'd like to get citizens' input in this and see, how they feel about it.
Right.
So,
But I mean, if you had a citizens committee, that would be a way of getting the citizens'
Yeah.
input on it, or have
Yes.
a town hall meeting or something like that. So let people come and talk to you about it.
yeah. So, I take Mike's comments, well, I think it's a good one. We don't know that the seniors in this village or whatever would like that equipment. And I don't know if this city is really happy about the recreation program. Maybe they would like to see some other things. So I think, every now and then, it's good to look at things again and sort of open it up and see what people feel.
Well, develop a plan. Yeah, bring it to us. Yeah, great.
Can you add another zero on the library?
Thank you.
Do you want to make any other comments? Loan prepay?
300 for the employee.
Use the microphone.
300 for the employee.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay.
All right.
So, Councilmember Bertrand, that does take us over the 1.1 million, which is staff's recommended threshold.
It still leaves
Okay.
us over 300 fund balance and we're not ready to really, and to your point, we're not
just
ready
discussing
we're
this.
not ready to spend,
We'll get through all
we're not ready to
this, and then
spend the
we'll circle.
300, or are we ready to spend,
We're just throwing out each person's numbers right
Okay,
now.
yeah. Don't get scared of 1.3
It's sort of
million.
like a
Not to be afraid of.
poll, a straw poll.
I didn't want him to feel nervous. He just threw out his
No, I was trying to calm him down.
very
1.3. So all those hash marks, like,
All right. Basketball courts, 25. What are we talking about for City Hall improvements? Are we just going to paint? Or-
Well, that was my suggestion, my very, very strong recommendation, that we put some money into fixing up the upstairs. It's kind of dumpy. I know we're on television, but it is. It's kind of dingy and dumpy. We need some more light, so that's why I was thinking some skylights or tube lights or whatever would work, and getting some new light fixtures in there, which would lighten it up. Maybe a can of some white paint. I don't know. I'm not talking about big furniture right now, but just something to improve it up there. It's small, it's kind of dingy, it's old, and I think we can do something to improve it. I'm not sure what, but I really think we need to do it. If we don't do it now, when are we going to do it? I mean, we haven't done anything up there for a really long time. We did a little bit of work down here, but it needs some work, and I think we can do something with a small amount of money. I mean, I've heard we need a new roof, but maybe we'll just keep patching that. So, but I think it's because we have these low ceilings that it's just a kind of could be much better, and I think it would be better with some more light, and I think that would make a big difference in creating a nicer, more professional work environment for everybody. Jacques?
I could agree with more light. Did you reach out to the employees and get a sense, or has anyone come back to you and told you sort of what they might feel like?
So I'll let Larry answer, because Larry convened a committee of employees, and they talked about
great.
some different
Okay.
options.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Yes, we had an employee meeting, and we kind of took a brainstorming session to see what people felt was important. And we kind of came up with ideas, and this range is kind of taking some of the potential quick, low fixes as well as some of the larger items. We are looking at lighting right now. We've talked to AMBAG and Ecology Action, kind of look to see about what we can do on with our current fixtures to improve the quality of light. things like that. But there was a whole gamut of potential options, and, depending on how much was budgeted would kind of determine the order of those projects. There definitely was a sense that some things could be done to kind of help the environment for, both aesthetic as well as functional.
Yeah, I mean, whether we need new curtains, some of them they're kind of, getting that way. And Jamie needs a new window in his office. I don't know if we need if there's other really bad windows there, but those kind of things that are.
Those items definitely came up.
Yeah, just to spiff it up a little bit so that it's nicer and it's a little more professional. And so if you worked there, how would you feel? That's what you got to say. You're going to work every day in that office. And I know we do. We go to work every day. But
What more do you want?
If you worked at one of those desks, one of those workspaces, how would you feel? And I think you'd feel like something could be done to improve this. So that's my point. I want our employees to be healthy and happy, and I think we need to spend a little money upstairs to fix it up a little bit.
It looks like my office, but then again, I can leave my office, so.
Well, and you're the boss, too. You're the boss. You're not the employee.
Doesn't look that bad.
So, can we come back with a better, more fleshed out proposal in terms of the ideas and how much it would cost? Give us a better idea of what you're talking about? Because I think the impact lights would be
Do we
sort
hear what Councilmember Peterson has
Oh,
to
I'm
say?
sorry.
I didn't mean to open a can of worms.
It's a good conversation.
Yes, that's right.
For the sake of discussion, I'm going to say 15 on City Hall.
Okay.
We can get something done. Senior exercise equipment, I'm going to say 25. PERS, 400. Library, 220. Streets, 200. And the employee down payment, 200.
Oh, come on. No, come on. Hash marks. There it is. Price is right. You're under.
Yeah.
I think she wins Price is Right.
Yeah, yes, she does.
Plus, it's not going over.
Stephanie hasn't bid yet. So that's it.
I'm not willing to do the basketball courts over City Hall. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I know they need to be done, and that's wonderful, but we need to take care of upstairs. And if we don't do it this year, I'm afraid we won't get it done, because I'll be gone.
It's not an either
And I don't
or.
know if anybody else is going to advocate for it.
No, Madam
Yeah.
Mayor, you can put things in every column.
I
You don't
know,
have to-
I know, I know. No, I'm just telling you. So I'm not going to put anything in basketball right now. And I would put 75 in that, City Hall, because I think it needs a lot more than that. And exercise equipment, I would leave open, because I'm not sure. I'm certainly willing to put some money in there, but not at this moment. Don't know whether it's needed or wanted or what we could do about it. So PERS Trust, 400 probably. Library, 220.
Sorry.
Doing good.
I need to look at the streets to see. I think probably the 200 is fine, but I think we need a list of the streets to look at the priorities and look at all of those things. Even though, Ed, I appreciate your position that, yeah, we're going to be getting that money, 400,000. You could, 400,000 doesn't go very far on some of these other projects that we have. And I think if we have the opportunity to put some more in there, I would. The down payment program, I don't know about that right at this moment. That I think it's a great idea, but there again, I'm not willing to put much in there if we don't do anything with City Hall, because I think City Hall is a priority for me. And the City Hall frontage, I think, is a great idea, but we can talk about that mid-year, maybe. And I agree with Ed, your comments about, putting extra money in the library is what we need to try to do this year, but also take care of business and not get so distracted by the bells and whistles. I would like us to increase our budget on council travel and training, even though we don't do it a lot. $1,000 is only going to get you to 1 or 2 conferences, and you may want to go to 3. I know we don't do it, but I've been invited before in the past to the National Conference of Mayors and the National League of Cities Conference, which I have gone to in Washington, D.C. That's going to use that budget in one trip. So not that we're doing that right now, but I think to put a little extra money in that, we have 2 new council members. They should be going to classes every month or every other month. They should be going to classes all the time. So we need more money in that, I think.
Would 5,000?
Each?
Well, you know, we pool it so that if
Yeah.
one of us isn't using
Right.
it, because you can have mine.
It's a total of
Right,
5,
but,
so
you know,
how much did you want to raise it to?
I don't know.
Sounds like a poker game.
It's at 5,000 right now.
I mean, we haven't used anywhere near that before.
So historically, we budgeted about 3,500, and that's been a number for a while. In the last couple of years, we've been bumping up and going over that. So we increased it to 5, and then we were realizing that it was only being used by a few individual council members, and so
Well, it should be used by everybody. I mean, everybody should be going to conferences and learning what's the latest,
Right.
best things going on in the world.
So one option is to keep your current process. This is just a staff proposal to say it's $1,000 training budget per council member. You could
They put 10 in the pot, and everyone should be judicious about that, and split that up 5 ways, like 2,000, and if you want to go over, talk to another council member. Say, are you going to use yours?
Are there any classes in Vegas?
Yeah.
I'm just
There are.
spitballing over here.
No, well, I put my name in that way there's no Brown Act, so you and I can go, okay.
And I have to be consistent, and I do have a bathroom fetish. I will admit it. These 2 bathrooms still could use some work, and the ones out there still could use some work. These could be improved, and they could be much better. So I really hate to keep putting money in thinking about bathrooms, but, we want to look sharp and be sharp, so let's have nice-looking bathrooms.
Would that be part of your $75,000 city
No,
hall improvement?
no, that's
Oh,
extra.
on top of that?
No. I mean, the ladies should go in the men's, and the men should go in the ladies, and, just check them out. With new fixtures and a coat and a little bit more paint or new mirror or whatever, they'd be terrific. So that's my list
How
for
much are the
tonight.
restrooms?
I don't know. I don't know what, I don't think it's going to cost that much. I don't know.
Mr. Public
Get
Works
some bids.
Director.
Let's get some bids on
How much were the
sinks and
bathrooms
toilets and
at the
paint.
wharf? How much were the bathrooms at the wharf?
Yeah, you do not want to look at, you do not want to compare those. Those are not good.
Compared to that.
Those are no, those are.
I think we
those are
spent about
inferior.
$5,000 on the wharf bathrooms.
Okay.
These, I don't think they need, well, in my opinion, they don't need new fixtures. We could do that, but I think they do need new wainscoting and painting and new flooring in there. And that'd probably
Toilet
be
paper holder, if that one falls off.
Okay.
$5,000 be,
probably $7,500 by the time we get it all done.
Okay.
That would be nice. So that when the tourists come here, we want them to spend a lot of money and have a wonderful experience. We want them to have a nice bathroom experience, too.
just for the, we've never been vandalized in those bathrooms. Have we got a problem with that?
Not significantly.
I don't even.
Well, not the men's room. I don't know.
I mean, vandalism as in making a big mess and leaving, yes.
No, I'm not
But
talking about a
not
mess.
vandalism as in tagging or destruction, no.
Right, no destruction. Sometimes they're messy.
Yes.
I understand. Okay, that's.
I have a question of staff.
Before Mayor Harlan, did you want to weigh in on the employee down payment assistance, putting anything in there at this time or not?
I'm not sure about that, so I'm not sure. But the other thing is, I really hesitate to put the money into Jade Street and so forth unless we have some kind of agreement with the school district folks. So are we
It's in
working on
motion.
that?
It's in
Are we
motion.
working?
Yeah.
Well, maybe let's keep the money in motion until we get a deal.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing the first step in coming to an agreement with them by encumbering money to do the repairs. When they see that, I believe, my crystal ball tells me, they'll be inclined to attach an extension of lease for an X amount of years in proportion to how much we're investing. So we're doing actually the first step in that particular negotiation.
And keep in mind, we had already, I think, agreed on the $75,000 for the parking lot for Jade Street. The additional 25 was only going to be 25 because they were already there. To do the basketball courts on their own, Steve, would have probably been doubled if we didn't just tag on to that prop. So it was almost like a 2-for-1 bargain.
Yeah.
I think that's why everybody kind of supported the basketball court.
I'd like to ask staff a question because I kind of feel there's a column up there that inspires me to make a motion.
Okay.
And that is, if we're not really sure or we're not ready to spend the money on the employee down payment program yet, and we're really not sure how much senior exercise equipment or or programs we're going to use of that 60,000. And if we're not sure what the pavement management index is, why would I not propose Councilmember Bertrand's column with the addition of 25,000 in City Hall improvements? I know that would be 1.330, right? Which is going deep a bit past council's recommendation or staff's recommendations. But remember, there's almost $500,000 in there that we're not ready to write checks for. So we're still on solid ground, and I think you can make a case for every one of those items, and I'm sold on the 500,000 in PERS, and I'm sold to at least earmark the 300,000 for the employees, and we still have, $250,000 in fund balance, not even taking into consideration the money we're not really going to spend, just name. And that's my motion, is Jacques Bertrand's column, the Jacques Bertrand budget, we'll call it from here on, with the addition of 25,000 in City Hall improvements.
I'll second that.
You want a motion or just a consensus?
That's my motion.
And do we need a motion tonight? We don't even have public here with a public hearing to weigh in on it.
Well, you're going to want public comment prior to vote on the motion. Certainly a motion would be in order, and then we can talk about what the next steps would be in the budget process.
I made a motion, there was a second, and
I'm sorry, who made the second?
the motion is the column with Jacques Bertrand with $25,000 added for City Hall improvements. And that's just for the sake of discussion, and there's a second.
And Bertrand is the second?
Correct.
Okay, you're not picking up on the mic, so it's very hard for me to tell.
So microphobias now. After last time, I don't want to touch the thing anymore.
Don't touch it, just speak into it.
I need to speak up here because I like that we agreed on many of the items across the board, and I can see that there's a big consensus, but for me, there's a big disconnect here, and that's with the $200,000 in streets, and I got to go back in time, okay, and I don't want to do this, but I have to because this is a time for us all to be fiscally responsible. We approved a library that we could not afford to build. We went $2.4 million in debt. And we've made, of all the surplus money we had, just $1 million went in there. And what that means is that $1 million that could have been spent anywhere else in the city, we could have probably put $200,000 into the upstairs, Stephanie. We could have redone the front. We could have built a bathroom at Monterey Park. We could buy twice the exercise equipment. We're not doing all that because we're building a library. And you know what? I'm trying to get behind this library. But I got to remind this council that I just don't think we're being fiscally responsible by taking general fund money and putting it in the streets. And I can bring the Public Works Director up here, and I will do it if I have to, and ask him if it's absolutely necessary that we do that slurry this year. And if we put it off for another year, how devastated would that be in light of the money we just spent on $4 million over the last 4 years on streets? So it isn't like we're not doing streets. Prior to passing Measure O, this council would only put, I believe, Steve, the number's $185,000 into slurry each year prior to that. And this year, there's already going in there $220,000, and you're asking for another $100 to push it up to $320,000. We're already going to do the 3 green intersections. All I'm saying is, don't put any more money into slurry seal because that's cash dollars that we can put anywhere. And so I can't support 1.3. I mean, I'm sitting here trying to go with the city manager's direction. We pushed it all the way up to 1.1, which is that $500,000. Keep in mind, we've got, you talk about doing things for the employees. I think we've got salary or contract negotiations coming up next year. PERS is unpredictable. I'm trying to leave that $500,000 in there. It's not like, I don't even want to use the word extra money because it's not extra money. It's money we're going to allocate, and I want to be in a position to treat our employees fairly. I'm not worried too much about putting the lights up there. I think what they want right now is I think they want to keep working in the city, and I think a lot of them are being driven out by not being able to buy a house and being, outpriced at other agencies. So I'm more committed to keeping the money there and looking towards that, and I think that the things we've allocated towards the PERS is really smart. The library is something we're all going to, 5 of us are going to get through, and we're going to pay that off. And I just see that 1.3 is frivolous. I think the 1.1 guideline, we should not exceed that. So
let me just make a case for the 200. I'm not saying, Steve, make sure you go out and spend $520,000 on slurry seal. I want to earmark an extra $200,000 should we need it when our PMI comes in. That there may be $200,000 in slurry seal, but another $200,000 that are streets are a little worse that need chip sealing. So what I'm trying to do is make a statement, because remember, we're also talking about Measure O money here. And
Fine.
I know. And we did spend a lot of money on Measure O. And I think that we can't, because we have a measure that has expired, we can't now say, well, we can no longer afford to pave streets. I think it's as much of a statement as the employee down payment program, where we may not spend that either, but that money is still in there.
Well, Mike, we're not going to not spend it. We have $400,000 coming in for the next 30 years. $12 million is going to go into our streets. This city has not spent $12 million in probably the last 30 or 40 years on its streets.
No, I totally agree, but I'm saying this first year, we don't have a full year of Measure Measure D.
Right, we have 220,000. But Mike,
Right.
when you look at the other things, I also look at all these other things that Steve brought up about that sheet, if you can go to that sheet, about all the overruns, all those unknowns, like when Stockton came through and we all decided, you know what, we need to repave that because it looks horrible. And you know what, that was a great decision we made, but we stole $70,000 from some other fund. We defunded something. McGregor, let's not bring up the M word. Okay?
Understood.
So all these projects are going to deplete. So what I say is, you know what, I know that if we approve 1.1, somehow we're going to dig into that pot over the year and spend 1.3. But if we start out spending 1.3, we're going to spend 1.5, because when money's there, you spend it.
Well, what I'm trying to do is not have the same situation occur, because we know what happens in Public Works. And I'm saying to Steve, here is $200,000 should you need it for overruns and street projects. And I don't want to take it from Claire's again. I don't want to take it from Stockton Bridge. I want to try and beef up Public Works so that they have a little cushion. And that's what was my desire with that 200.
So, Madam Mayor, council members, I do want to chime in with just one point kind of behind the $500,000 fund balance target that I laid out in the beginning. The budget was prepared by Mark on his way out the door, and he did a great job of getting us a draft budget. Mark and I have gone through, and we've been working pretty furiously over the last 2 weeks, double-checking numbers, figuring out where things have come from. That overall fund balance figure hasn't been something that we've had a chance to fully go back and totally understand. And so, to some degree, the $500,000, I think, was giving us a bit of wiggle room if it turned out that we did think that number may have been off a little bit. So, if I could make one suggestion, I would really like to push the council to try to find a way to clip $100,000 out of this, even if it was just, say, $100,000 towards streets, or we took the PERS Trust contribution down 50, and we took the senior exercise equipment to sort of a mid-range. A couple little things I think would give me more confidence, just that we're not bumping up against potentially a zero general fund balance.
I could move, and I could alter the motion to do those two things: make the streets $100,000 and make the exercise equipment 40, and see where that brings us.
The other thing I would note is that I think it would be pretty logical to fund this project, the City Hall improvements, out of the facilities fund. So actually it wouldn't come out of that fund balance, because it would be a facility improvement. So we could essentially take that and put that down.
I'd like to take it out of the contingency reserves.
25,000 in your.
There's a lot of money in the contingency reserves.
But so it's 1.185, which
Makes me more comfortable.
is, well, we just made the city manager more comfortable in addition to buying him a new chair. So I don't know that we could do much better than that.
Is that your motion up there? I'm just trying
That's the amended motion, 1.185, and that is with 100 going to the streets, using the City Hall improvements out of facilities. And if it's okay with the second, that's my amended motion.
So
But
I'm happy we're keeping the PERS, and I agree with Ed. So I'd like to point out, and I think we all know that we just voted for D, which is streets. Okay, and that was countywide, but I think this city also voted for that. And we also voted for the library, so I have no problem doing that, and that's a direct vote. These are direct votes, okay. So some of the other things we didn't really get direct votes on. I think that's my major point on that.
You are the second. Are you comfortable with the amendment? Okay.
I'll just weigh in one more time, and I'll say, I think that that's a great whittling down. I mean, I think you truly worked hard to get to that 1.185. I'll just say that I'm going to be voting no against it because I cannot see taking general fund money into roads that I don't deem are warranted at this time. So I'm not going to support
Well,
that.
I'm going to vote against it because I haven't heard from the public yet, so I'd like to wait until we hear from the public. I know we'll vote again.
We're not voting. I'm just saying I'm not.
I know.
This is a public hearing, and this is a notice.
And this isn't the final
advertised.
vote on the budget either. This is just a first pass. And, you know, to try and swing you, Councilmember Brotorf, we're not telling Steve he has to spend that 100.
Right.
You know, it's a message, you know, just like, you know, how we put the money into the bicycle, I mean, the senior equipment, we may not spend it.
Right.
We put the money into the employee housing fund, but we may not spend it. And you put the money into the roads and we may not spend it. Here's what I know. When we go to do slurries, there will be an abundance of streets that need to be done. We will be doing roads until you and I are in our graves, okay? So, and Ron Graves is in his graves, okay?
Oh, not that long.
So, but anyway, we're always going to be doing roads. So, but the thing is, I believe the employee housing program will be utilized. I believe that we will probably, if we put the money in the senior equipment, Jacques will go do his homework. He'll come back and goes, I found it, here it is, it's perfect, we're going to do that. I want to put a zero there because I am sending a message. The message is, we cannot do everything in this town because we're a tiny little town with a small budget. And we can't go out and build a $13 million library that's $2.5 million over budget and put all this money here that doesn't exist. It's a message.
But the message is roads are important. The community believes roads are important, and the Finance Advisory Committee was very strong on roads, and we're cutting it in half already.
I don't think they fully understand Measure D. I don't think they sit on the RTC. I don't think they understand that we will have a streamline of $400,000 coming in for the next 30 years. I don't think they realize that.
But that doesn't alleviate our responsibility to keep the roads in the best shape we can.
So the Finance Advisory Committee did ask some questions on this, and as my understanding was that our road funding activity with Measure O or D, whatever the heck it is, that money is gone. I mean, we no longer get that funded. So, in the gas tax thing, and there's some other funding streams that are out there in the future. The argument was that if you look at major road funding activity, like, for example, FANMAR, just because I always ask about that, he says you pick a number, but that's 200,000, could be $500,000 to do that road. So the number Steve threw out is like, when all's said and done, this funding will be more like $300,000 a year when we get from the measure that as it passes. So the thought was that's not that healthy of a funding stream, and so with that background, the Financial Advisory Committee, and again, this wasn't unanimous because there were some abstentions, said that, well, we need to make a statement about roads. And if the Measure D money's coming in late, it's not going to be that robust, then let's throw some money at it.
So here's an argument to slightly augment the slurry seal project, and I appreciate Councilmember Brotorf's and Councilmember Termini's position on this. You know, there's value in quantity, and if we're going to go out and do a slurry seal project, those extra dollars you put in end up like $2 that you would have put in at the front end, because you're mobilized, you're on site, you're doing the work. In addition, the more you can do slurry seal also has the advantage of kind of freezing the condition of the existing roads, so you don't have further deterioration, so that in the long run, our Measure D revenue and our gas tax revenue that will be coming in can be spent on the higher impact projects. And then thirdly, it is visible. And I understand the perspective that, look, we have outside restricted funds that are going to be coming in for roads, but it also is something that is an opportunity, particularly if we're going to be doing a relatively large slurry seal project, to really sort of amplify. So that's the pitch.
John.
Yeah, so you summarized, I think, what I feel, actually, and I stated it a little bit beforehand. But I think, to reiterate what Peter said, we did talk a lot about what is the message that we get continuously from our residents, and the streets and roads are important. The police is very important. So it was in a recognition of that that came to be a recommendation from the FAC. And so all these things send messages, as Ed said. When we actually commit to some of the things that our citizenry has actually told us they want us to do, then to me that says we are responding as we should as an elected member of this body. But also understand what Ed's saying. We have this stream that's coming from D, and as you just said, Peter, it may not be as high because it's dependent on sales tax. We have gas tax that may supplement to some degree. I'm not too sure how that's going to work. So in one sense, I'm in support of this, but I'm also waiting, Steve, for your figures that come from, the report that you're anticipating. And so we're not too sure if the 200 is going to make it or the 100 is going to make it. But I think that's going to refine it a little bit better. And then later on, you could bring, Jamie, up this spreadsheet, and we can finesse it a little bit more. And so I totally agree with Ed that this money is coming, but I think that I have to answer to what people in Capitola have asked us to do, and that is to give us good streets and roads. We've come back to the city's residents multiple times to ask for sales tax increases as we go through the years and try to keep our roads up. And one just expired. We now have D. We're actually lucky to get that. But we've continuously done that, and I still hear complaints about the roads. There's a bunch of people up on Fanmar that keep pounding on my door. And these guys are insistent, so, as an example. So, and I'm not trying to give some levity to it, but the reality is that it is going to be with us forever. But as Jamie just said, it's a proactive thing. So the more that we put in something right now, the less we're going to have to do later on as we move down the road.
Other comments? Kristen, anything else you'd like to say?
Just from where I stand, I agree with everything that's been said. I agree that streets are important. I'm also concerned about going over the 1.1. And I've only recently come to appreciate how, since being on council, how important this PERS trust is. And so I agree that it needs to be the biggest chunk of money that we have for PERS. But even if we are willing to drop that 500,000 to 400,000, then we're going to stay within that 1.1 that we wanted.
We ready for a roll call vote? Or,
I just want to request for the next meeting. Steve, if you can bring, no, you don't have to get up. I just want to give you a homework assignment. Forget the last 4 years of Measure Road where we spent all that money, which was about $1 million a year, give or take. I want you to go to the years before that, the 5 years before, and come back with us with how much the city allocated towards roads for those 5 years. So at our next hearing.
Well,
and I'm sorry, that was just a question.
Well, I'll give you a little historical context. We used to spend like $400,000 or $500,000 a year on roads, back in the good old days. And then we got behind, and we got very far behind.
Yeah, the last 5 years was about 180,000 is what it was. And Steve's going to verify that, but that's the number. So the fact that we're putting 220 in this year, we're exceeding what we used to put in. Knowing, and like I said, if we really wanted to do this right, I wouldn't put anything in this year. I'd bundle it up with next year, and then you'd have 650,000 for a slurry project.
My training has been, my teachings have been that one of our primary jobs is to take care of the city's infrastructure. And that is, we take care of the people, we take care of the infrastructure. And that roads is extremely important. And we had wonderful roads here for a long time, and that's how we were able to, attract all the business on 41st Avenue also. We were a nice community. Come here, we're a nice community. We have nice roads. And then we just got way behind. So my philosophy is it's part of our basic service. It's part of what the general fund should be doing. And unfortunately, RDA went away, so we don't have that money for 41st Avenue. But general fund, to me, equals part of it should go for roads every year. And we shouldn't get so behind like we did before, because it was embarrassing, because we did have such good roads. And to have it gotten like that is for me personally embarrassing.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. I mean, the comment I get, like on, was it 48th, 47th, certain areas you and I have walked a couple of times is, gee, I have this great house. I just spent a lot of money for this house, and look, the roads are junk, And so it's a reflection on how they feel about the neighborhood they live in. It's a reflection on, their community in general, and I think that's an important thing, So that's why I have no problem doing it.
Call the question?
Any other comments? This is good. This is a good, healthy discussion. I mean,
Yes,
lots
it
of
was.
lots of different points of view and so forth.
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Peterson? And do we want me to, it's the column G motion? Is that clarified that
That's the
we're all clear that's what?
That's the amended motion.
That is the amended motion that we are voting on, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Peterson?
Aye.
Councilmember Termini?
Aye.
Councilmember Bertrand?
Aye.
Councilmember Bottorff?
No.
Mayor Harlan?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So that takes us back to our, so there are other items the council wants to discuss about the work plan or other areas for staff research or other budget
Well,
items.
if I could, I think Jacques' idea about the exercise equipment goes hand in hand with our review of the recreation department. And I think it may not be a par course physical equipment. It could be augmenting our recreation budget to offer more senior programs. That could be where that money winds up. So I'm feel strongly about us, freshening up our recreation program and reviewing it.
Well, I actually met with the superintendent a couple weeks ago, and I said that one of the topics that we could have for a joint meeting with the school board members would be, let's look at the recreation program. What do the students need and want, and what can we provide besides junior guards and everything else that we do? But there may be some other things that we're missing that we're not thinking of. But they say, yeah, have that, have some classes in that.
They would also, they have mentioned at the breakfast meetings that when the library gets closer to completion, they would like to have a joint meeting with us regarding library activities and how it dovetails with the school programs.
Yeah, he's going to try to set up a meeting this fall.
So I'm sort of seeing, without any proposals at this time, a general idea that we kind of like to look at the rec program. It's good to look at things every now and then, to revisit, to see, are we still in tune with our neighborhoods? Are we still in tune with the people that we're trying to serve? And, quite frankly, if it turns out we don't need exercise equipment for seniors, fine. If it turns out that they would like to have other specific programs, as you just said, Mike, that's it. That's the way I would go, for sure. I just want the people in this town to have an opportunity, recognizing that there's more and more seniors in this town, to have some input into the rec program. I think it's great we're doing tennis court. Great. I think it's great that we're doing basketball, but I'm not going to see that suiting the needs. I think there are seniors that go out there playing basketball. Last time I did that, I ruined my hips. But, maybe I'm an exception, but I'm not going to do it again, that's for sure. So it's that kind of idea.
And I also, I think the youth program, either youth council or, making a real considered effort to get more young residents into our
That's a good idea.
committees and commissions.
So there are grants available. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I had also mentioned to the superintendent there may be many students that would like to volunteer for our activities, including volunteering at the museum, at Art and Wine, to get involved with, Begonia Festival and our activities. Let's bring in some, if the youth would like to come and help us be volunteers, that would be great to get them involved with things.
Absolutely. And I think that really the easiest, or not easiest isn't the word I'm looking for, but the potentially the best way to get started with something like this is to add a youth seat to all of the commissions and boards or committees and boards that we already have. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're not starting a whole new initiative from the ground up. We already have those committees in place. And then just by adding a youth seat, I think then there's potential for each of the youth who are on those individual boards and committees to meet together occasionally, and that in and of itself becomes the youth commission. I think that would be, we don't need any new budget for that. We don't need any more staff time than letting people know that we've got these seats open. That's what I personally would think would be the best way to go about it.
I like it.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Fluid.
Yeah, it fits with what we do already. Cool.
Any other business? Then I don't think, unless there's any requests for any special projects or special activities.
I think we just underscored two of the work programs that
I think you did.
you're interested in.
Yes. So I think the next question is right now we have a budget hearing scheduled for June 7th. We have a June 8th. We have some time penciled in that agenda. We have 2 other items on general business, so this would be the third business item would be to discuss the budget again.
I would like to move that we leave all these meetings in place, because there's a very good, I believe there's a better than even chance that we're going to pass a budget on June 7th. And that being the case, we can always cancel meetings, but let's leave these dates where they are.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think the June 7th agenda report will be due tomorrow.
Yes.
So as staff, we're not prepared to have the package ready to go on June 7th.
So we'll have to have the 15th meeting.
So then you're saying you want to cancel?
It would go out, we would have both packets going out actually on Friday. So it depends on whether you want to place it on Wednesday or Thursday.
Right, you could do it on June.
Could we leave this up to staff's discretion?
Yeah, but I mean, why couldn't we do it on Thursday at the regular meeting?
If you have time at the regular meeting, that's fine too, but let us know tomorrow whether we're having a meeting on the 7th. But for now, just leave those dates open. You can do it the way you like.
If we're ready for a budget resolution and adoption, my recommendation would be to cancel June 7th, cancel June 15th, and we'll get it on either the June 8th or June 22nd agenda.
We can be done.
We can cancel a meeting at a moment's notice. We are ready to do that.
Okay, and we'll do our best to get the budget adoption documents together this week.
We have faith in you.
So we're eyeballing the 8th.
We're eyeballing the 8th.
I have a question.
We can at least put it on the agenda, and if you're not comfortable with what we have, then we'll continue it to the 22nd, correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Or the 15th.
Kristen?
Yeah. I have a question. When we come back to this, will there be another opportunity to look at the proposed capital projects?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we haven't even scratched the surface
Okay,
of this
good.
budget.
This is just a proposal.
Yeah, I mean,
Good, okay.
we really need to go through the whole thing so that we understand it.
Yes, and I have concerns about completely gutting that 40 grand for the Grand Avenue path. Even if we're not moving back, I'm concerned about getting rid of all of that altogether, because I don't feel good about going to a committee designed to try to look at options for the path and say, but any options we come up with,
No money.
I don't know how we're going to do them because there's no money.
Valid point.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I mean.
We don't want to send you into a gunfight with a knife.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay, good.
And I'm not saying we should keep all of it either. If it needs to be cut drastically, I just want to be able to, be discussing this with people in a way that they believe and understand that the conversation is valid and is, being given the weight that it deserves.
On the other hand, we don't want to give them false hope we're going to spend any
I
money
agree.
out there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So if there's consensus about leaving the 40,000 for now, I mean, we've set it aside as part of the Measure F revenue. So if there's consensus now, we can drop the budget documents, assuming the 40,000 stays in.
Maybe.
I guess getting that guidance tonight would be
Go
helpful.
back to the 550 original. You don't need to pump up the flume or the jetty. You could just.
Right. We can leave the 40, and then
Measure
if
F
at the end of Kristen's process, we determine that we need the 20,000 now for the Flume project, we can make that decision down the road.
Or if we need a study for Grand Avenue that's going to cost 10 or 20, we have that capability.
Just leave it at 550 and leave the path in there.
Is there council consensus on that?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
Thank you.
I
Now,
completely
if the
agree.
city
with-
owns about halfway up the cliff, why don't we offer that property for sale to the new owners of the Cliff Apartments?
Yeah.
And they can have the total liability.
The crest?
You want to sell someone a bottom half of a cliff?
Yeah.
You're wonderful. I love you.
I know. Thank you. We can get some money for this.
The only other issue, I think, is that I believe that's county property. Where the park is, Upper Esplanade Park. So we could be selling someone else's property.
Can we sell the
I say
people on
let's
Grand
sell it and
Avenue
get rid
for
of
half the
it.
cliff?
It's not ours.
But the problem I have is I thought some of that's sanitation, see?
That's what I mean. It's
Yeah,
sanitation.
it's not ours, it's sanitation, so why are we building a wall for sanitation on this
Right.
property?
Right.
Because we want to have an upper Esplanade Park.
Well, I'm not sure I want to spend that much.
Well, we should
cliff is gonna be coming down
do it
anyways.
in conjunction with sanitation district, and it should be a joint project.
Well, certainly we would welcome any funding we can get from sanitation district, but our understanding to date has been the sanitation district isn't prepared to help assist in stabilizing the bluff there.
Hasn't been on our agenda.
You can bring it to them, Stephanie. You're on sanitation. Yeah.
That and
Hasn't
the-
hadn't been on the agenda. I've
Can
heard
we
about
put
it.
it on the agenda to make a recommend, can we just add it to the agenda for the next meeting? Is it, to make a recommendation?
Sure, as part of the budget, we could ask sanitation to help us with
At least we could formally ask.
We want-
Do it here, but.
We want some sewer money.
what I think the Public Works Director should give us a little bit more update about kind of what's going on up there, because there's a number of nuances. My understanding is I think that I think that there's 40 tons of dirt and rock that we're sort of waiting to go, and that's been a little bit of the holdup. Is
Right, yeah, that's the big thing right now, is there's a chunk, there's a crack at the top of the hill, about 40 yards of material ready to come down.
Another inevitable fall.
Yeah, so that's why we're keeping the upper part closed, because we don't want anybody up there.
Right.
And Eric Zinn, who was the geologist who looked at the bluff, is also looking at that for me, trying to figure out if we can map where it's going to fall and figure out if we can open any part of the park. Regarding ownership of the park lands there, so it's a mixture of city and county sanitation properties in there. And there's old agreements, and I'd have to dust them off. It's been a while since I looked at them, that we kind of said, when they abandoned that used to be a sewage treatment plant on the upper part of the park, and they moved it to the pump station. The pump station's actually on city property, and we exchanged that for use of the upper part of the park. And I think the agreements talk about, responsible for maintenance thereof. So
We are
Yeah.
responsible for maintenance.
I think that's what it says. I mean, certainly the understanding in the agreements was, we'll take care of the parts we use, you'll take care of the parts you use, and we're not going to worry about transferring title and all this between the two agencies, similar to what we used to do at the school district. So I think it's unlikely that the sanitation district has much interest in repairing that retaining wall.
Okay.
Because if it fails, it doesn't mean anything to them.
Right.
So it's our park, and I think we're responsible for maintaining
Right. I
it.
just thought we should let them know if we're building something on their property.
I don't think they care.
They probably don't, but
They don't.
just to let
So
them
back to
know.
that's my take on it.
Back to the Crest
I
Department.
think it's a good
Yes,
public
I think our
policy.
best opportunity is to do a joint project with the Crest Departments, because they have a very
real
big
interest.
interest in trying to maintain that cliff face, and we have an interest in keeping that upper part of the park open.
Okay.
Thank you. Other comments?
We don't want it to be the fallen crest apartments.
Anything else that you'd like to get some information about for the budget? If you think of anything, let Jamie know. Any other comments or observations? Then we will adjourn for the night. Thank you all very, very much. Good night. Larry, I have this for you.